Lord of the Rings Online, an MMORPG set in the world of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth, widely known as one of the greatest fantasy franchises of all time. Developed by Standing Stone Games and initially released in 2007, it is an MMO 17 years in the making, becoming a beloved title by many fans and has garnered almost a cultish following over the years. What makes this game so special? Whether it's living out well-known scenes from the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, the preservation and care that the devs have for Tolkien's original lore, or holding close to the belief that adventures are more about the journey than the destination, Lord of the Rings Online has a way of drawing you in and immersing you into this magical fantasy world. Now for me, playing through Lord of the Rings Online has been something I've wanted to do for a long time. So this is going to be a bit of a passion project. I grew up watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it's definitely my favorite movie series of all time. I've also read through The Hobbit as well as the original trilogy, and even though I'm not a scholar, I have a tremendous amount of respect and appreciation for J.R.R. Tolkien. The level of commitment to world building in his writing is uncanny, and I'm happy to say that the developers of Lord of the Rings Online have stayed true to this theme in the creation of their game. I'm not going to lie to you, it's definitely not for everyone. It can be slower at times, and the graphics are a bit outdated, but if you're looking to become immersed in a world full of lore, adventure, and beauty, you have to give Lord of the Rings Online a chance. In this video, we will be looking at both the new player experience as well as the magic that makes this game so special. Let's jump in to see if Lord of the Rings Online might be just the game you're looking for. Starting off with character creation, there are 8 races and 12 classes, from men and dwarves to elves and hobbits, basically exactly what you'd expect to find in Middle-earth, with the exception of the forces of darkness such as orcs or goblins. That would be an interesting twist, but as of right now, it's not an option. Personally, I was drawn to the elf and hunter class. Now, each race comes with a short backstory and a few different trait boosts that will affect gameplay by various means. There's also unique starting zones for the different races, offering a level of replayability and giving players incentive to create multiple characters to experience different storylines. And with every class, we're shown the level of difficulty, role, as well as the style of gameplay you can expect. In hindsight, the hunter was probably not the best pick, but I don't care. I'm just here to live out my childhood Legolas dreams. The character customization is quite simple, but not terrible when you compare it to other games from the early 2000s. There's enough preset options to choose from to make a relatively unique looking character. There was an option to play the Before the Shadow tutorial if you pay for the expansion, and also skip the tutorial altogether, which I'm sure is appreciated by veteran players looking to start fresh. We will be going the free-to-play route, so the standard tutorial it is. Since ZMAC was taken, I added an X at the end, and would you look at that, it was available. And so, the journey begins. We spawn into a room with none other than Elrond himself, who immediately beckons us to come quickly. The new player hints appear as small blue text boxes that pop up as you progress. WASD for movement and spacebar to jump. Left mouse button moves the camera, and the right mouse button moves both the camera and your character. Right click to interact with NPCs, and oh boy, it's all text. Get out your reading glasses because there is a lot of reading in Lord of the Rings Online and very little voice acting. Right off the bat, Elrond teaches us how to loot items by tasking us with opening a satchel that he places on the ground. I ask him for his autograph, but he tells me that now is not the time. Right click on the satchel and then right click on the items we wish to loot. Simple enough. Another pop-up teaches us about the inventory and how to equip weapons and armor, either by double clicking on the item or dragging it onto our character through the character panel. So after looting the gear satchel, we receive some weapons, a knife, and a stick bow. For some reason, the name stick bow doesn't give me much confidence. As I look at my screen, I notice that the minimap and quest tracker in the top right corner are infinitesimally small, but I'm pleased to discover that Lord of the Rings Online allows you to customize almost every aspect of the UI, which I ended up doing a lot. Ah yes, much better. Now I can see it without having to look through a magnifying glass. Elrond then instructs us to follow him to meet Talagon, our master. Even though there's minimal voice acting, I did appreciate the blurbs that would appear over certain NPCs' heads throughout the story. Talagon wants to spar with us, which is where we get our first glimpse at combat. The combat is simple. Right click on enemies to attack. The quick slot bar at the bottom of the screen shows us our 4 basic abilities, and surprisingly, Lord of the Rings Online automatically switches players from melee to range depending on your distance from enemy mobs, which is quite nice. Damage pops up as yellow numbers when dealing damage and red numbers when taking damage. Health is known as morale in this game, and you'd be able to see it if it wasn't under that big join the community followers box in the top left corner. And before you think to yourself, this guy's an idiot for placing it there, I can explain. At the time of recording, I was also streaming, but on my main screen the followers window was not visible. When I went to review the footage, lo and behold, the application had added the follower box to the main screen recording. Don't fret though, eventually I caught the error and fixed it. After we took turns whacking each other back and forth, I bested Telegon. Almost immediately, the ground begins to shake, and Elrond tells us to meet Telegon outside to stop the evil dwarves from stealing some of their sacred relics. Lord of the Rings Online is filled with instance areas separated by portals and loading screens. The doors to these portals can be opened by simply right-clicking and then walking through them. We then receive another pop-up explaining the quest NPCs throughout the world, designated by rings floating above their heads. Blue rings are simply helpful reminders, flaming rings represent epic quests which correlate with the main storyline, and even though the hint box didn't clarify, I figured out that just plain gold rings are basic quests that players can complete to receive additional XP and rewards along their journey, which, spoiler alert, you will have to complete a bunch of them in order to level up and progress through the main story. We then meet up with Edelben to protect the refugees from Skorgrim's forces. After following him to the east gate and seeing a gigantic troll, he decides that he doesn't actually want to die, so we run back to the west gate. And oh yes, our first encounter with an enemy, a fearsome Dowerhand dwarf, faced the wrath of my stick bow. Well, that was pretty easy. We ran into a couple more dwarves, all of them repeating the line, "I won't fall to you, elf," right before falling to me, which made me wonder if they understood what that phrase actually meant. After fighting our way through some of the dwarves, we are tasked with aiding in the defense of the courtyard. We come face to face with the familiar foe, and just before he reaches us, Elrond saves the day. What a legend. The devs have implemented drama moments throughout the story where characters are halted in order to witness very important scenes, which I think is a nice touch for player immersion. We then follow Elrond back towards the library only to witness our master's demise as he sacrifices himself to kill Skorgrim and protect the sacred relics. This ends the tutorial, triggering one of many cinematics that are put into the game to bridge gaps in the story, catching us up on past and or current events, while also preparing players for what's to come next.
The old refuge of Athelion lies abandoned, a ruined testament to the greed of Skorgrim Dowerhand. 600 years after its fall, dwarves inhabit the ancient halls in the mountains, and Elrond of Rivendell, sensing a threat, has sent his sons Elrohir and Elladan along with a company of elves to investigate.
We spawn at the snowy blue mountains of Ered Luin and are greeted by Nas Grimsong, who tells us the dwarves are here to investigate the current failings of the steward of Thorin's Hall. He then tells us to talk to Elladan, the son of Elrond, to figure out why the elves are also here. This is our first encounter with a common reward system in Lord of the Rings Online for completing quests, where players get to choose a piece of gear they'd like to receive. While I was reading through the options, I was pleased to find I could increase the size of the text by clicking some font arrows in the corner of the quest box. For those of us who are starting to strain our eyes just to read the label on a cereal box, this was a nice quality of life feature. The game then teaches us about the quest guiding system, and honestly, I like it. It helps point you to the general area of a quest on the minimap, but once you're nearby, you will have to look around to find what you're searching for. It gives you enough guidance to figure out where to go and who to talk to, while at the same time, not feeling too hand-holdy. Not sure if that's a word, but I'm sticking with it. I do think the quest tracker system on the right side of the screen could use a little bit of work, but we'll let it slide for now. We meet up with Elladan and get to choose a new chess piece. Since I'm playing as a hunter, I'm limited to wearing light and medium armor, and unfortunately, it was never explained, or I simply missed it, how the different equip loads affect your character. Just from hovering over the gear, the only difference that I could see was the amount of armor. So I went with medium and continued to do so whenever the option arose. It turns out the elves are here because of one of Elrond's premonitions. We then receive some foreshadowing that, though both have found themselves here for different reasons, the path of the elves and dwarves might be intertwined after all. Then we get a pop-up that explains how to manage our inventory, giving us the ability to customize it however we'd like, which is quite nice. So what's better than 3 moderately sized bags, 1 giant inventory bag, and oh goody, another pop-up. Seriously though, there is a lot to learn as a new player in Lord of the Rings Online, and if you don't take the time to read through all these hints, you will be hopelessly lost after a few levels into the game. The pace of learning isn't bad since they introduce new concepts one at a time, but just be prepared for it. Here is where we learn about the Lord of the Rings Online quest log, which, in my opinion, is done very well. Alongside the standard compartmentalization of various quests, there's a show history option which displays a review of the steps you've already completed for specific quests. There's also a Find a Fellowship button to group up with other players for quests that require more than one person to complete. We then speak with Merithen to inquire about the riddle of Elrond's dream. She gives us a piece of the puzzle, but directs us to speak with Dorolus for more insight. He tells us that he suspects this terrible steward is none other than Skorgrim himself, back from the dead. So we return to Eladon to give him the news, and he doesn't believe us. Nevertheless, he trusts Merithen and allows the investigation to continue. Grab some medium leather gloves, reach level 2, and discovered the character panel. This is where players can view all the details about their character, including equipped gear, cosmetic outfits, stats, and a bunch of other stuff I clearly wasn't interested in at the time, considering I didn't click on any of it. More on that later. Now, before we depart for the investigation, Eladon wants us to hone some of our skills at the nearby hunter trainer. She teaches us that certain abilities cost focus, which players have to build through other means during combat. I like this since it forces players to strategically use certain abilities while also causing others to carry more weight. I feel rewarded whenever my penetrating shot lights up. This is a good design. Even though we receive an upgraded weapon, I am sad to say goodbye to my good friend, the stick bow. You've served me well. Now that we've got some training under our belt, we're ready to adventure into the world and start our investigation. And would you look at that, there are dual-wielding daggers in Lord of the Rings Online. This game keeps getting better and better. Eladon sends us to find Dornil, but I get a bit distracted by this beautiful view of the nearby landscape, which tends to happen a lot in Lord of the Rings Online. And oh look, a person! My first encounter with another player. I make a detour to catch up with them and they completely ignore me. I say hello, which triggers the wave emote, but still, nothing. Whatever, Turthringorm. I didn't want to be friends with you anyways. Alright, back to the quest at hand. We meet up with Dornil, who tells us to talk to Nathriel. When we find her, she's sitting on the steps, looking downward, clearly distraught about something. I love this about Lord of the Rings Online. They took time to add small details in the game that add to a player's sense of immersion. Many MMOs would just plop her in the world, standing upright and staring straight ahead, but they've added non-verbal body language into the game. Very nicely done. Nathriel tells us to talk to Doringer, who we find at the site of Skorgrim and Talagon's deaths many years ago. We learn about consumables, are tasked with exterminating some pests in the Silverdeep mine, and test out our parkour abilities on this bridge, just because we can. On our way to the mine, we get to experience some of the creative differences on the architectural design for the different races in Middle-earth, which I absolutely love. These stairs on the side of the mountain scream dwarven design, another point for player immersion in Lord of the Rings Online. We enter the Silverdeep mine and start killing the cave claw pests. And remember how I said it's important to read all the text box hints earlier? Yeah, I missed this one. It tells players that loot automatically goes into the pending loot panel, and in order to obtain it, you have to open it up and collect it, which means I did not get any loot from my time playing for quite a while. Well, maybe I'll learn my lesson and read through everything next time. Probably not. But next week, uncover the trait tree panel and pick our class specialization. Being able to move while dealing damage sounded like a good option for me, so I went with the huntsman. The traits are pretty standard. Level up, gain a trait point, spend trait points to acquire new powers and abilities as you progress. Nice. We go on a bit of a cave crawler killing spree and reach a site where Skorgrim's body was supposedly found. There's some strange flowers growing in the area, so we bring them back to Eladon for further inspection. He tells us to follow a mysterious flower trail which leads us to the entrance of Thorin's Hall. Soon after, we meet Gormer Dowersmith, the current steward of Thorin's Hall, and this is the first time I experienced major server lag. I stood next to the NPC and tried clicking him countless times for 30 seconds or so. Meanwhile, the game kept saying, already in use. I was close to restarting the client, initially thinking it was a bug, but we'll come back to this later. The steward denies entrance to Skorgrim's tomb, but invites us to pay him our respects at a shrine. Once we've done that, Gormer invites us to the ritual of commemoration later that evening. One thing to note is that after completing certain quests, other ones become available. Now that we know about this ritual, a nearby dwarf gives us a side quest to help collect black stones for the event. I appreciate this dynamic style of progression and storytelling, since it makes me feel as if the decisions I'm making in the game actually affect the world around me. After collecting the black stones, we meet up with Dwaylen to tell him of the steward's plans for the upcoming ritual. Dwaylen explains to us that things have been going awry and all the dwarves have been getting sick ever since Gormer became the steward of Thorn's Hall. We're tasked with collecting some samples from the soil and sick bears nearby. You'll notice that Lord of the Rings Online doesn't just tell you the dwarves are sick, but there are actually a bunch of dwarves laying on the ground, suffering from illness all around you. I like that. The map is a bit underwhelming. I understand that it's an older game and they were going for a more classic look, but it just feels a bit scuffed. The in and out zoom is not very helpful since it's either the entire zone or a much larger portion of the map that doesn't even indicate to players where they are. I did get used to it over time, but I would love to see some improvements made in this quality of life feature of the game. After all, traversing through the world is one of the most important elements of an MMORPG. We took a little detour, completed a quest that gave us some of the premium in-game currency, and learned how to buy stuff from the in-game store. And oh look, we got our first ever mount. To activate it, we simply double-click on the mount in our inventory, and then it asked if I was sure I wanted to do this, which I was a little confused about. Why would you add a "Are you sure?" pop-up for the activation of mounts? It made me second-guess myself, but thankfully that's exactly what you're supposed to do. We find the writing ability in the skills box within the character panel and drag it to our quick slot bar. Let's see what this bad boy can do. Nothing too crazy, but it's quaint and it does speed up movement slightly. I am grateful to the developers for giving players mounts without forcing them to pay for it. We set out to hunt some sick bears and oh nice, we received our first title in Lord of the Rings Online for making it to level 5 without being defeated. Zemak the Wary. I didn't do much of anything to earn this, but I don't really care because it made me feel good about myself. You'll see most people running around the game with some sort of title above their head, which I think is a brilliant idea by the devs to incentivize players to achieve certain goals throughout their time playing. Not only do you get a sense of personal accomplishment, but you can also rub it into other people's faces that you're just better than them. After collecting the samples from the soil and bears, we return to Dwaylen, who concludes the mountain springs have been tainted and something or someone must be behind it. So we go to check it out. We kill some Dourhand dwarves and then meet up with Eladon's brother Elohir outside a mysterious cave. He's here to investigate his father's dream further, coincidentally converging our paths. He tells me to go look for some herbs that will cure the dwarves of their disease inside the creepy cave. I ask him if he wants to join me on the quest, but he says no thank you. I value my life, so I think I'll stay out here. Right. We come across some worms, skeletons, and corrupted spirits, make light work of them, reach level 6, definitely don't get lost or waste time running into dead ends, and find the source of poison at a mossy shrine. With his dying breath, the spirit says, "Tonight, the little dwarf king shall walk again." We return to Elohir with the herbs and he concocts a remedy for the plagued dwarves. We bring the tidings to Dwaylen, and although we should probably get those meds to the sick dwarves ASAP since they're actively dying, we decide to take a little snooze instead. And we have a vision of a she-elf, who I assumed was Galadriel. She tells us to look into her mirror where we witness evil rising with Carm Doom. A clip of Gandalf fighting the Balrog at the bridge of Khazad-dûm and Theoden slumped over on his throne in Rohan. I loved this. Thus far, we've not been deemed as the chosen one, which, in my opinion, is a good thing. We've just been doing our part in this edge of the world, but Galadriel does say, "I've seen you often in my dreams, and your fate is tied to that of Middle-earth." It feels like the devs just wanted to give us a little reminder or heads up of, hey, you are a part of a much bigger story. Your time just hasn't come quite yet. It made me excited to continue on the journey and see how I, a lowly Mirkwood elf, could play a bigger part in this grand story. This is the point in the game where I would say I was truly bought into it. Even though the combat was a little clunky, the graphics were a bit outdated, the traveling was kind of slow, the servers were laggy, I still felt a sense of adventure, ready to continue progressing through the game to see what else was in store for my character. And this is probably my favorite thing about Lord of the Rings Online, the sense of adventure you get from playing the game. You really feel immersed within this seemingly limitless world. It draws you in and it makes you want to keep exploring, which is exactly what I did. And oh yes, I did save those dwarves, by the way, for those of you who were concerned. Dwaylen comes up with a plan to prevent the Dour Hands from resurrecting Skorgrim, and we're told this will be the end of the game's introduction, so make sure you've done everything you'd like to do before moving forward. We enter the instance and arrive inside Skorgrim's tomb. All of the main characters I've interacted with are present, which I really like. It made me feel as if the interactions I had with these NPCs actually mattered, and the quests we completed were worth something. And now we get to see the story flesh out. Another thing I have to point out, the architectural design inside this tomb is stunning. I found myself looking up and spinning in circles trying to take it all in. I can only imagine what this would have been like to experience it back in the early 2000s. Very nicely done. We make our way to the end of the tomb, where Skorgrim is resurrected by someone named Ivar the Bloodhand, but he's not brought back to empower the Dourhand dwarves. No, Ivar says there are more powerful forces awakening and has other purposes for Skorgrim. Gormo is left behind and feels betrayed, so we ambush and kill him. With the help of the elves, we're able to escape the tomb before it caves in on top of us. This brings us to the end of the game's intro storyline. Overall, it was quite good. I felt invested into the story as well as the main characters along the way. So as a new player in Lord of the Rings Online, you begin your journey in a beautifully crafted world that immediately immerses you in the rich lore of Middle-earth. The starting areas are designed to introduce you to the game's mechanics, from basic combat to questing, all while providing a glimpse into the unique cultures of the race you've chosen. And as you progress beyond those initial areas, you'll start to really see the magic within Lord of the Rings Online. Let's dive into some of those reasons right now. The journey itself is the reward, is a phrase that resonates deeply in the Lord of the Rings Online experience. This idea captures the essence of what makes the game so special, especially for players who appreciate the richness of the game's world and the storytelling that unfolds as you explore it. Players are rewarded for taking their time, exploring, and cherishing the moment, often stumbling upon beautiful landscapes or historical landmarks. The goal of Lord of the Rings Online is not primarily to level, min-maxing for optimal gear, or reaching endgame, but rather to simply enjoy the journey. The community of the Lord of the Rings Online is often praised for being one of the most welcoming and friendly in the MMORPG genre. The community is what drives the game and has been keeping it alive for all these years. Not only are players friendly and helpful, but they are fiercely loyal to their beloved home. Musical performances are a beloved and unique aspect of the Lord of the Rings Online, offering players a chance to engage in creative expression within the game. Its music system and its vibrant community of player musicians have made in-game concerts and performances a major highlight. It allows players to perform using instruments like lutes, harps, drums, flutes, and more. Many players form bands, creating their own music or performing covers of popular songs arranged for Lord of the Ring Online's music system. These bands often perform at organized events or spontaneous gatherings, and some have even become quite famous within the community. Some of the more popular larger events being Weatherstock, Ales and Tales, and Shirefest. Of course, we can't talk about the community of Lord of the Rings Online without mentioning the thriving role-playing scene, particularly on servers like Lorelin and Landreval. Whether you just want to participate casually or join some of the hardcore D&D-esque player campaigns, you'll find a vibrant community that appreciates the rich lore of Middle-earth. Sadly, in the current age of entertainment, many, if not most, production companies deviate from the lore of established franchises to try and appeal to a wider audience. But I am thrilled to tell you that this is not the case with Lord of the Rings Online. Standing Stones Games has carefully and thoughtfully preserved the lore from J.R.R. Tolkien's original works, and they take this responsibility very seriously. Whether it's small details about hobbits or the planted sapling of the white tree planted by Aragorn in Minas Tirith, Lord of the Rings Online strives to maintain the integrity of Tolkien's vision for Middle-earth with careful supervision. The game's expansive world is more than just a backdrop. It's a living, breathing rendition of Tolkien's Middle-earth. From Ered Luin and the Shire, all the way to Gondor and Mordor. Lord of the Rings Online boasts one of the largest MMO game maps of all time. Even though there is some debate over the exact measurements, 77,700 square kilometers or 30,000 square miles seems to be the most commonly seen number, we know that it takes players many hours to traverse across the world. And beyond the impressive geography, there are hundreds of hours worth of quests and stories to be discovered in Lord of the Rings Online. The game's epic story quests, which parallel the events of the Lord of the Rings, are a major draw. As you progress through these quests, you get to interact with key characters from the books, and your actions often feel meaningful within the context of the larger narrative. The story isn't just something to rush through, it's meant to be savored. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, you're not the chosen one, which frees up the developers to be a bit more creative within the different playable storylines. Players get to experience things happening behind the scenes, and you get to unveil the role your small little playthrough has in the grand scheme of things. Not to mention the diverse playstyles. Lord of the Rings Online offers unique classes that are specifically designed to fit into the lore, such as the Lore Master, Hunter, and Warden. And each class has a distinct playstyle that complements the game's thematic elements. Having the ability to choose from iconic races like hobbits, elves, dwarves, and men, each with its own starting area, storylines, and cultural elements, takes the game to the next level. And did you know that you can actually change the difficulty of your playthrough in Lord of the Rings Online? In 2023, the developers introduced a landscape difficulty system, allowing players to adjust the difficulty level of the open world content. You can increase the difficulty, which makes enemies tougher, incentivizes more group play, and can provide worthwhile rewards. This system can be accessed by visiting certain NPCs in the game, and you can actually toggle the difficulty on or off as needed. Anytime a game developer invests time into giving players more options of how they want to play through a game, it's always a good thing. In conclusion, you'll discover that Lord of the Rings Online is more than just a game. It's a celebration of Tolkien's work, brought to life through dedicated storytelling, a passionate community, and a world that truly feels like Middle-earth. Is Lord of the Rings Online for you? Only you can answer that question. But if you ever choose to give the game a try, just know that the magic within Lord of the Rings Online is waiting for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching the video as much as I enjoyed making it. And if you did, be sure to subscribe to the channel for future content. Playing through Lord of the Rings Online truly has been one of my favorite gaming experiences of all time, and I can't wait to continue my journey through Middle-earth. Let me know some of your favorite memories from Middle-earth and what makes it so magical for you. Hope you have a splendid rest of the day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.